Lions run a Philly special, and they blow out the Seahawks.
My God, are we cooked.
The Seahawks, unfortunately, are undefeated no more.
The Tennessee Titans scored 30 points.
You are Locked On Mets, your daily New York Mets podcast.
Baseball's all-time hit leader has passed away.
The Locked On Podcast Network presents The Big 6 in 60. The 6 biggest national sports stories from the local experts of the Locked On Podcast Network. Get the real story, why it matters, what's next, who wins the big game, and more, all in 60 minutes. The Big 6 in 60 starts now with the biggest story in sports.
Lions run a Philly special, and they blow out the Seahawks.
You are Locked On Lions, your daily Detroit Lions podcast.
A lot to get into tonight. We got to talk about Jared Goff, the offense, the play calling, the Philly special, St. Brown getting the pitch, throwing it back to Goff. Love seeing that. You just had a feeling a trick play was coming. Seattle was bunched up on the interior on that call, and you just had a feeling some sort of misdirection, something was going to work in that spot. Defense tonight was a little bit leaky. We'll get into that coming up momentarily. Joe Buck was infatuated with Jake Bates's extra points, which narrowly went through the uprights. He was very into that, but they went through. And the Lions getting much needed win heading to the bye as they sit at 3-1. Everybody looking up in the NFC at the Minnesota Vikings, who are 4-0. Hard to argue with what Minnesota has done, and they just went into Green Bay and beat the Packers. But man, I like what I saw from the Lions offense tonight. They wanted the football, start the game. They won the toss, elected to receive, which was smart. You keep Geno Smith and that Seahawks offense off the field. Remember, the last 3 times the Lions have played the Seattle Seahawks put up like 48, 37, and 31, something like that. And the Lions finally snapped this 6-game losing streak to the Seahawks. Again, excuse the voice. I'm doing the best I can in this situation, but we got to get through it. But the Lions got the ball first, which I liked. They wanted to get it and attack. And yes, they got stopped on their first possession. They held Seattle on their first possession, but it was on that second possession. The Lions go 93 yards in 12 plays. They cap it off with a David Montgomery touchdown run. And for the second straight week, this was Lions football. This was who the Lions are, which is run the rock, pound the rock. And you got to give credit to Hank Fraley, the Lions offensive line coach, because this was a game the Lions went into without arguably their most valuable player in Frank Ragnow, who is as good a center as there is in the NFL. I know there's Creed Humphrey and there's others. Frank Ragnow is special. He's a tremendous player. Tore his pectoral muscle last week. Told Dan Campbell this week he wanted to play, but they're like, look, let's sit him out for Monday night. He'll get a bye next week as the Lions don't play. And then he'll be ready, hopefully, for Dallas. So Graham Glasgow moves over from left guard to center. And Coyote Awashika, who had played a lot last year, and he's a good, solid, dependable backup, went in at left guard tonight. And I thought he did a tremendous job. The Lions were running behind Awashika, Woshika, whatever you want to call him, and Decker, and all those guys. And they established being physical. You know, ESPN picked up one of the Seahawks, the defensive players were kind of huddling before the game. And one of the guys on their team was like, they're soft, they're not tough. And it's like, what are you talking about? All right. You can't out-tough the Lions. This is their identity. And for the last 2 weeks, after what happened in week 2 and Goff throwing the ball 55 times, excuse me, Ben Johnson and the staff have gone back to doing what the Lions do best, and that is run the football. You've got a dominant offensive line. Has anybody watched these other games the first 4 weeks? O-line play is at an all-time low. You got guys out here holding on every play. You got guys out here that are not willing to put in the effort to block for their quarterback or block for their running backs. The Lions O-line, they're so well coached with Fraley. There's veterans up front. There's dominant guys like Sewell and Ragnow. You got really, really good players like Zeitler and Decker. And, Glasgow's a pro. And this team tonight established the run. Again, David Montgomery, give him the football. 12 carries, 40 yards. Jahmyr Gibbs, 14 carries, 78 yards. Lions on the night ran for 116. They had held Seattle in check for the first half. Second half, Seahawks exploded and finished with 133. But again, it was the Lions early on that established their will. And I liked that. You knew Seattle was going to put up points. We just talked about it. Geno Smith, for some odd reason, loves playing at Ford Field. And again, the Lions can't get to him. Way too much time to throw tonight. Smith, 38 out of 56 for 395. He was sacked 3 times. The Lions got some hits on him. But at times tonight, way too much time to throw and way too comfortable. Seattle had over 500 yards of total offense tonight against the Lions defense. But I want to talk about the offense for a second. We've talked about this for weeks. What's wrong with Jared Goff? Why is he not himself? Did the money get to his head? All these things that people can speculate on. I don't believe any of that. He just hasn't been crisp. He hasn't been sharp. Tonight, ladies and gentlemen, he did not miss a throw. A perfect 18 out of 18, which is an NFL record because the last time anybody went without missing a throw was Kurt Warner in like 05 when he went 10 for 10. Goff goes 18 for 18, 292 yards passing, 2 touchdowns, no interceptions, a passer rating of 155.8. Now, the perfect passer rating is 158.3, but because the Jamison Williams touchdown pass was a lot of run after catch, that takes the percentage down. Don't ask me why. I was asking people about it tonight, and that's what I was told. But a tremendous performance from Goff. Stood in the pocket, made big throws when he had to, threw the ball away when he had to, took a sack instead of throwing an interception when he had to. The spin move in the first quarter to get the football over the middle to St. Brown. Utilizing more of Sam Laporta. I love the tight end screen that Ben Johnson called tonight for Laporta. I thought that was really great. And you just loved what you saw from this football team this evening on the offensive side. Everything was clicking. There weren't a lot of mistakes. Yes, there were some penalties defensively and everything else, but you go into a game against the Seattle defense that had been really good the first 3 weeks, and I know need water. I know they had played some bad quarterbacks, Bo Nix and Jacoby Brissett, and last week Skylar Thompson. So you knew they were going to be tested. They had 4 defensive starters out tonight. Leonard Williams was out. Mafe was out. They had guys out. But the Lions took advantage of it. And, Witherspoon's really good. Woolen's really good. They got good players over there. Seattle's a good team. That's not an easy out, especially with that offense. But you saw tonight, Goff get into a rhythm. You could tell he felt good. The running game then set up the play action pass, the throw over the middle to Jamison Williams where St. Brown was also free. He just made good decisions. And on Monday Night Football in front of a national audience to go 18 out of 18 for 292 and to catch a touchdown on the Philly special from St. Brown. It was a night that we all needed to see from Jared Goff. What sucks is this bye week next week, and I know the Lions have a lot of injuries, so it's not a terrible time for the bye, but the offense is now in some rhythm for the first time all year. Put up a big number at 42, a 42 burger, and yet they will not be able to play next week. They're off before heading to Dallas in 2 weeks, and the Cowboys are very banged up. And now Micah Parsons could be out a few weeks, so we'll have to see about that.
Hey, NFL fans, you can start the season with a big return on FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and much more on the same page where you place your bets. You'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. And you can place that bet on some early week 5 lines following a big win over the Saints. The Atlanta Falcons are 1.5-point favorites over the Bucs this Sunday. The Texans host the reeling Bills. They're favored by 1.5 in Houston. If you aren't interested in good football, you could check out the over-under for Raiders Broncos, which is currently set at 36.5. And I think that's probably still too high. So what are you waiting for? That's FanDuel.com to get started. Are you watching Fox Sports or ESPN on your TV all day? Have to turn down the volume with all that shouting? Make the switch to Locked On Sports today, a free 24/7 sports streaming channel programmed for you every day to bring you the biggest stories without all the screaming. Locked On Sports today brings you can't miss analysis, opinions, and news, streaming 24/7 on YouTube or the free Amazon Fire TV channels app, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
My God, are we cooked?
You are Locked On Dolphins, your daily Miami Dolphins podcast.
The Dolphins falling 31-12 at home at the hands of the previously winless Tennessee Titans, knocking starting quarterback Will Levis out of the game. Backup quarterback Mason Rudolph comes in. Probably was the worst thing that could have happened to Miami because if you have Will Levis play, maybe you get a couple more short fields. Not that the Dolphins would have been able to do anything with him, but this performance from the Dolphins is an affirmation that all of the worst case scenarios for this football team are happening, and they're happening all at once. And all of the concerns about what the Dolphins offense looked like last week with game plan and play design and attempts to call a game and keep the offense on schedule, it all popped back up again. And it was a lot of self-inflicted wounds, 10 penalties for 98 yards, can't get lined up and run a play of offensive football. You go 2 of 12 on third down, 1 of 3 on fourth down. So I guess that's some progress. The Dolphins, I think, had one conversion for a first down in the late downs against Seattle. You quadrupled your points from Seattle to at home against Tennessee. I feel bad for this Dolphins defense, man. 244 yards conceded led to 31 points because Tennessee kicked a bunch of field goals. Their average starting field position felt like it was about the 40-yard line. And just the antithesis of complimentary football was what the Dolphins put on display. This team is playing like one of, if not the worst team in football right now. And some of this is indeed an issue of your starting quarterback being out. Your starting quarterback's not going to fix all this. And I think, if anything, the absence of the starting quarterback is pulling and bringing to light and amplifying some of the fundamental issues that exist with this football team. And it goes to as basic as calling plays and designing a plan to play offensive football based on the talent that you have. And the affirmation came from Dan Orlovsky and Louis Riddick, who called the game and were on the broadcast. And they're sitting here asking for the same stuff that Dolphins fans have been asking for since Tua was out. And you saw flashes. You saw these. How many designed runs did the Dolphins run for Tyler Huntley? Tyler Huntley finishes the game as the leading ball carrier, eight rushes for 40 yards and a touchdown. The Dolphins' touchdown was a quarterback run, right? They ran some zone read type of stuff. They ran a quarterback draw. But I didn't think they nearly ran it with the quarterback or called those kinds of plays to take advantage of what Tyler Huntley brings to the table. And instead, we're watching Tyler Huntley try to do the the topper running back going over the top of you in pistol or shotgun, play action ball fake, and then turn around and throw the ball with timing and trying to orchestrate these shift motions that, quite frankly, like, I don't know. I have a hard time. You have Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle. You have two receivers that are perceived to be. Now, Tyreek drops the swing route that turns up being a fumble for the Dolphins turnover. And that's a whole other conversation about how Tyreek Hill's played this season. And Jalen Waddle drops one on an in-breaking route. That's on his back hip, but it's still a ball that you need to catch in a game like the one the Dolphins played offensively today. But those two guys with the element of what they're capable of bringing against coverage, you saw Tyreek. He had 2 touchdowns in the field that Tyler Huntley left the first one short, and he left the second one long. Can you work on those kinds of plays and just ask your speed to be the speed? Because they showed very little respect for Tyler Huntley's ability to throw the football throughout this game. And then you didn't really lean into the quarterback run game the way that you thought maybe you would, because that's what Tyler Huntley historically has done really well. And then lo and behold, some of the other best plays that you had offensively, they go empty. They spread it out. We stop with the shifts and the motions with a quarterback who's only been here for a couple weeks. And they run an outside release go, and they run an out in the slot. And it's pitch and catch. And they go straight drop back passing. And it's like, oh, hey, there's a nice play. Maybe we can get more of that. Nope. We're going to get popped on 3 consecutive plays for illegal shifts because guys can't get lined up right. Guys don't know what side of the ball to line up on. And it's the regression beyond just, the quarterback's out. It's the regression of every element of what this football team is doing it's jarring. And that's why we did the show on Monday. And the show on Monday was expectations minus reality equals disappointment. And I was very clear. My expectations to this football team are out the window, and we are watching and observing this team through an evaluation mindset of who needs to be here beyond this season. And the answer from like a big picture perspective right now, and there's 13 more games, unfortunately. Yeah, 13 more games to play. The answer right now to that question doesn't look like it's going to be anybody, from my opinion. Anybody. And some people had these worries, and some people voiced these concerns. I thought they were premature relative to the information that we had in previous years. But to see all of it manifesting at once, it's wow. And wow is probably about the only way you could put how the Dolphins performed.
The Seahawks, unfortunately, are undefeated no more.
You are Locked On Seahawks, your daily Seattle Seahawks podcast.
The first loss of the Mike Macdonald era, a 42-29 defeat at the hands of the perfect Jared Goff and the Detroit Lions. Connor, this was one of those games where, it was odd. Late in the third quarter, I even tweeted this out. I thought after a 70-yard touchdown to Jameson Williams that this game was over. That's what I pronounced it, because it just felt like the Seahawks could not get any stops to save their lives on defense. The Lions were just doing whatever they wanted to do. And then you turn around and suddenly it's an 8-point game again. And it just kept feeling like the Seahawks could get so close, but they just could not find a way to get over the hump. And for that reason, they are going back to the Pacific Northwest with a 3-1 record, still a really good start to the season, but a game that disappointingly did not go their way with all the injuries they've got on defense and just some really poor execution, particularly on that side of the football.
Yeah, again, Corbin, I've been thinking about what I wanted to say about this game in general for about 2 hours now at this point, and it's tough to summarize in one small snippet here, but the one thing I will say is, first of all, Geno Smith is the best player that the Seattle Seahawks have. I don't think it's up for debate anymore. At this point, we have to be looking at a situation where Seattle extends this quarterback to be able to make him their signal caller for the next X amount of years, however many years that's going to be. At this point, I'm almost thinking, give this man a 5-year deal. At this point, I mean, this guy is the reason that Seattle was in this game. You can look at Ken Walker's 12 carries for 80 yards and 3 touchdowns and think, okay, That's the reason that Seattle was in this game. But if you actually watch the game, you see everything that Geno Smith did in order to orchestrate every single drive that Seattle had in order to be able to even stay relevant in this contest, evading pressure, being able to step up in the pocket, roll out of the pocket, whatever it might be, find the receiver downfield. He was incredible in this game. He set career highs in next to every single passing statistic that there is. Completions, attempts, yards, everything that you can possibly look at. Geno Smith was just exceptional. I have no other word for it other than the fact that Geno Smith was exceptional. On the flip side of that, Corbin, the defense, no matter how you put it, outside of the starters being down 4 starters to begin the game, a 5th with Julian Love going down, you have almost half of the defense out of this game. We brought Mike Macdonald in for a reason. The Seattle Seahawks brought Mike Macdonald in for a reason, and that's for a performance not like this. This is, in my opinion, Corbin, unacceptable from a defensive perspective from the Seahawks standpoint, just in the fact that you allowed Jared Goff to complete 18 of 18 passes for 292 yards and 2 touchdowns. I mean, it's honestly, it's a laughable performance from this defense, regardless of what perspective you're looking at it from. And I don't want to just sit here and rail on the defense, but at the end of the day, you had so many opportunities to make a stop and you didn't. And the only time that you did towards the end of the game was with Tyrell Dodson, one of your starters, one of the guys who stepped up, made a play, and then the offense wasn't able to get it done. I think at the end of the day, Mike Macdonald has to do a better job of getting this defense, regardless of who's playing, ready to go. And it was unfortunate because at the end of the day, it's going to be something that we look back on a couple weeks from now and I think probably laugh about a little bit because I think this team is really, really good, Corbin. I think they're a really, really good football team. But tonight, it just didn't show. It didn't show, and they were able to fight back purely because of the offense, but the defense just played terrible. It played terrible.
And listen, this is where I stand on this, having watched the game here from the press box, and what an environment that it was at Ford Field. These Lions fans, they brought it. It was loud in this stadium. But the way that I'm looking at it, you can point the finger at Mike Macdonald all you want, but Mike Macdonald's not the one that's making coverage busts happen in the second half. He's not the one that's doing that. The guys were not executing. As Rayshon Jenkins said after the game, a lot of self-inflicted wounds, really poor tackling. Like Mike Macdonald's not making that happen. You got to go out and do your job. It just didn't seem like, I don't know if it was because of all those starters that were out. And look, the players are not going to say that after the game. That it was, the general consensus from the guys. That had nothing to do with it. Our communication was just off. But when you're missing that many pieces, it just didn't seem like the energy was there at all. After the first drive, 3 and out, Jaron Reed gets a sack on 3rd down. It's like, hey, Seahawks defense looks just fine. But that ended up being fool's gold because the next couple drives, the Lions marched right down the field. They could run the ball whenever they wanted. Jared Goff could complete passes whenever he wanted. He never had a ball hit the turf tonight. As you said, 18 for 18. He averaged 33 yards per completion in the second half. He threw 6 passes and had 200 passing yards in the second half. You just can't do that. And I think the other thing that's really frustrating from an execution standpoint, the Detroit Lions had 13 first downs in the first half. You want to know how many of those they got off of 3rd downs? Just 2. That means they were getting first downs on 1st and 2nd down consistently. They weren't even getting to 3rd down. The Seahawks couldn't even get them into a 3rd down situation most of the time. That is the mark of a defense that is completely off. The secondary did not look good. The linebackers struggled. They had their issues, obviously, with all the injuries up front. I actually thought the edge guys that started, I thought the starters, Derek Hall and Draymond Jones, played really solid football. But when those guys subbed out, they were in trouble, and they had a lot of issues. It just felt like the well-oiled machine we saw the last couple of weeks, whether it's boiling down to the injuries or not. A lot of this really was execution. I don't even know that the game plan was a problem. It's just guys were not executing their assignments. And when you're playing a really darn good football team that is well coached, that has the strong culture the Detroit Lions have, they've got their home crowd. They're wearing their new black uniforms and their blue helmets. I mean, everybody's fired up. Calvin Johnson's getting inducted into their version of the Ring of Honor. maybe the second best player in franchise history. I'm still giving Barry Sanders the crown as the best Lion ever. But nonetheless, the energy there, you cannot have those kind of self-inflicted wounds. Fumbling the ball like DK Metcalf did on a first down catch. Look, the effort was there. You're not going to fault a guy for the effort, but the fumble was huge. The Lions get gifted great field position. You can't make mistakes like that and expect to win games like this. But a lot of the mistakes were on the defensive side of the football throughout the night. And I felt a lot of it was execution more than not having a good game plan. And you could say that could boil down some to not having guys ready to play, but it definitely was an execution issue more than anything else.
No, I agree with you, Corbin. And that's the thing. And that's why I love, obviously, the yin and yang that we have on these post-game pods, because I think you do a really good job, obviously, of kind of boiling down into those nitty-gritty things. And I always try and take a big picture aspect. And the thing is you're right. It's not all Mike Macdonald. Obviously, there's only so much he can do with the personnel that is handed to him on any given night. And obviously, Seattle was extremely limited. And I'm not going to sit here and make excuses for the injuries that Seattle has or the penalties that they faced. I mean, the Tyler Lockett penalty there in the fourth quarter on the offensive pass interference, everybody's gonna have their excuses about, okay, well, that drive should have gone on and they should have gone and tied the game, whatever it might be, and everything else. But look, football is football. We're not going to sit here and talk about whether the refs made a right call or they made a bad call or everything else. At the end of the day, they made a call. Okay. Tyler Lockett initiated the contact. All right. Whether it was a good call or not, he initiated the contact. You can see his arms up. It's something that the refs are going to call. That's football. Okay. So we can't just sit here and sort of whine and complain about that. That's going to happen in every single NFL football game. At the end of the day, plays have to be made. And you alluded to it, Corbin, that fumble by DK Metcalf in the first half was, at the end of the day, really the biggest play of the game, even at the end of the game, whenever everything shaked out the way it did. Because if DK Metcalf doesn't fumble that football, Seattle probably goes down the field and maybe, potentially, ties the football game, and they're not in a 14-0 deficit early in the game. The offense doesn't have to do so much heavy lifting to get them back in the game with a decimated defense. There's so many things that could have happened in this game that just simply didn't happen. And I think that's the whole reason we're here, right, Corbin? That's the whole reason we're even talking about this game. That's the whole reason the Seahawks are even worth talking about, is because football happens in these ways, right? One small play can make such a massive change in the way that a 4-quarter game plays out. It does not come down to one bad play or one good play, or whether one ref makes a good call or a bad call. That's not the way that the NFL works. It's going to be a 4-quarter game, and whether or not you can come back or not come back from a small mistake or a big mistake, right? And that's what makes this so good. But at the end of the day, Seattle is and I want to reemphasize this because maybe I laid into him a little bit too hard in my opening statement there, Corbin. This is a good football team, and I am not worried about Seattle moving forward whatsoever. I think this is a very, very good football team. It's one of the best football teams we've seen Seattle field in quite a long time. The biggest thing is the defense does have to get healthy, because we've seen how bad this defense can be whenever they're relying on the backups. And at the end of the day, it's a big thing whenever you're relying on guys who have had very little preparation. It's not that Quentin Bohanna and Travis Gibson are bad football players. It's the fact that they are not starters in this defense during practice and everything else coming up through the week and throughout the season and everything else. You have to get these guys ready to be in starting roles quite quickly. And that can be difficult from a personnel perspective to try to get these guys to fill these gaps that some of these other guys have filled through the first 3 weeks of the season. And it's just not easy. It's just not easy. This is a good football team. They're going to be fine. I think if you get through this week, which they have, and they proved to a lot of people, I think, in my opinion, Corbin, that they are a good football team. And if you get through this week, you go play the Giants on Sunday. If you get out of that game with a win, you're going into Thursday against the Niners with potentially a 4-1 record. No matter how you come out of that game, you're still looking pretty good overall. I'm not concerned about this team. I just would have liked to see a little bit more on the defensive side.
Yeah, I don't think that this is a game that is going to be, hit your panic button. The fact that they bounced back from the mistakes they made in the first half, they were down 14 at halftime and had several chances to tie this game up, and they just couldn't quite get over the hump with the injuries they had. The fact they were able to battle it out and stay within a score, I think the offense really showed what it's capable of in front of a national audience. They even had some mistakes that they could have fixed up.
Game Time makes getting to the ballpark even faster and easier. Prices on the Game Time app actually go down the closer it gets to first pitch. With killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, and their best price guarantee, Game Time takes the guesswork out of buying tickets. They're obsessed with finding ways to help you save money on tickets. Game Time has deals on tickets right up to the start of the event and even an hour after it starts. It's the place to find last-minute seats. Find exclusive flash deals and sponsored deals on tickets for football, basketball, baseball, concerts, comedy, theater, and more. And the Game Time guarantee means you'll always get the best price. If you find tickets in the same section and row for less, Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the free app, and new users can get $20 off their first purchase with code Locked On. Terms apply. That's code Locked On for $20 off your first purchase with Game Time. Download the Game Time app today. Last minute tickets, the lowest price guaranteed. Are you watching Fox Sports or ESPN on your TV all day? Have to turn down the volume with all that shouting? Make the switch to Locked On Sports today, a free 24/7 sports streaming channel programmed for you every day to bring you the biggest stories without all the screaming. Locked On Sports Today brings you can't-miss analysis, opinions, and news streaming 24/7 on YouTube or the free Amazon Fire TV channels app, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
The Tennessee Titans scored 30 points.
You are Locked On Titans, your daily Tennessee Titans podcast.
Folks, I don't care about the circumstances. I don't care if the Dolphins are despicably bad. I don't care if it was their third string quarterback. I don't care that Will Levis almost ruined the game at the beginning of the game. I don't care if Mason Rudolph is also bad. The Tennessee Titans won a football game, and I am going to be happy about it. Okay? I am going to be happy about it. And not only did the Tennessee Titans win a football game, they scored over 30 points for the first time in over 1,000 days. 1,000 days we waited. Thank you, Brian Callahan. Thank you, offensive line. Thank you, defense. So much to talk about on today's show. I am going to talk obviously, just about my excitement for the Titans to win a football game here. Like, that's the number one thing that I'm going to be talking about. It's just being happy to be a fan of a team that won a football game. It's that simple. Be happy your team won. But also, we're going to do tighten up, tighten down in the second segment, and I am going to give a ton of tighten up love, especially to T'Vondre Sweat. My Lanta. What a game from the rookie defensive tackle. But at the end of the show, we will talk about some realities. But for right now, I want to see some tighten ups down in the chat. I want to see some thumbs up on the video. The Tennessee Titans won a game in primetime, scored 30 points. Now, if you don't know, I am your host, Tyler Rowland, 25 years as a Tennessee Titans fanatic. Cover the team for USA Today, Sports Illustrated, been hosting the #1 Titans podcast for 6 seasons. The Tennessee Titans win this game 31-12 over the Miami Dolphins. And it was ugly at first, folks. I mean, we went to halftime and it was 9-3. The Titans looked disjointed. They couldn't really get anything going on the ground. Obviously, the quarterbacks were not playing that great. The Titans tried. They tried to make this game close. There in the second, third quarter, we had, a punt almost blocked. The Titans let a big return happen. The special teams are the special teams, man. They're special in a very different way. Let me just say that. But at the end of the day, this is exactly the game plan that I told you about yesterday's show. Don't do anything despicably stupid. Take the ball away from Will Levis. Will Levis wanted to ruin this game. He wanted to. He threw the interception. Stupid play. A terribly dumb interception. Once again, from Will Levis. I don't know about you guys, but I've been going on FanDuel every single week and betting on a Will Levis interception. And my God, Will Levis buys me a free sandwich every single week. Thank you, Will Levis. But then he dives, hurts himself, and Mason Rudolph comes in. All right? And all of the haters in my comments have been saying, put in Mason Rudolph. Put in Mason Rudolph. Well, hey, guys, you got your wish, and the Titans got to win. 31 points. Now, Nick Folk is going to need an ice bath tomorrow. I bet his right leg is sore after all that action that he had. And look, I'm not going to sit here and tell you that Mason Rudolph was excellent or something like that. But the point is, you don't need the quarterback to be excellent in some of these certain situations. The Titans didn't need excellent quarterback play to beat the Chicago Bears. They just needed the quarterback to not kill them, to not turn over the ball a million times. And look at this. Oh, let's check. Let's just look one time. 1 sack. 1 sack allowed in the game. Miami has Jalen Phillips, Calais Campbell. Miami has Emmanuel Ogbah. Miami has a good secondary as well. Look, the Titans' offensive line, all of a sudden, the Titans' offensive line isn't a despicable mess. All of a sudden, they're run blocking and opening holes. All of a sudden, they're not giving up a million sacks. Why? Because competent quarterback play, even bad quarterback play that isn't an outright disaster, is how you win the game. The Titans did exactly what I said in my keys to victory. I'm going to throw them up again for you. Tackle, tackle, tackle. The Titans did not allow the Miami Dolphins to beat them with missed tackles, getting the ball to their speed guys, breaking tackles, and letting them free. The Titans didn't do that. Run the ball. I kept saying, take the ball out of Will Levis's hands as much as you possibly can and give it to Tajay Spears and give it to Tony Pollard. Well, look what we found here. 142 yards on the ground, 2 touchdowns on the ground. Tony Pollard, 22 carries, 88 yards. Spears wasn't as efficient with 15 carries for 39 yards. But again, you didn't need to be. This is the JV Miami Dolphins. And look, I acknowledge JV Miami Dolphins. Mason Rudolph didn't play great. Mason Rudolph wasn't good. All of you people acting like Mason Rudolph is a starting quarterback in the NFL, don't think that you're right, because you aren't right. You are absolutely not right. Mason Rudolph is a backup. Now, I think he's a good backup. And this is why. He could just steer the ship. He's not going to do anything incredibly stupid. He's just going to make easy throws if they're there. He's going to hand off the ball. He's going to run a clean operation by the offense. And then the Titans, outside of the Will Levis interception and the near punt block, they tried. They tried to do the stupid mistake, but they didn't end up making any massive mistakes in this game. This is the formula, folks. And to be honest with you, this is how a lot of teams have been winning in the first month of the NFL season. There's been a lot of ugly football in the NFL. Teams that are winning. Look at the Houston Texans. They're 3-1. And if you listen to Locked On Texans, they want everybody fired because it's been so bad. It's been ugly football the first month, but you can win with ugly football if you aren't the team that shoots yourself in the foot. And the Titans didn't do that because Mason Rudolph didn't do that. He just organized the offense, did what he needed to do, got the ball out, didn't take sacks. I mean, like, this was the game plan against this JV Dolphins team. Just get a win. Just get a single win. And that is exactly what the Tennessee Titans did. So, again, it's been over 1,000 days. The Titans scored 31 points. The Titans were 0-3, and they got a win. The Titans didn't kill themselves in this game. You are allowed to be happy about that, and I dang sure am going to be happy about it. I am going to feel great about it, as a matter of fact. I'm going to feel great about it. It is nice to see your team win a football game. And I couldn't take an 0-4 start. And when it was like 9-6, oh, man, I was worried. But a great second half by the Titans. They wore down the Dolphins defense. They ran the ball like they needed to, and they didn't kill themselves. That is how you win a football game.
Hey, NFL fans, you can start the season with a big return on FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and much more on the same page where you place your bets. You'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. And you can place that bet on some early week 5 lines. Following a big win over the Saints, the Atlanta Falcons are 1.5-point favorites over the Bucs this Sunday. The Texans host the reeling Bills. They're favored by 1.5 in Houston. If you aren't interested in good football, you could check out the over-under for Raiders Broncos, which is currently set at 36.5. And I think that's probably still too high. So what are you waiting for? That's FanDuel.com to get started. Are you watching Fox Sports or ESPN on your TV all day? Have to turn down the volume with all that shouting? Make the switch to Locked On Sports today, a free 24/7 sports streaming channel programmed for you every day to bring you the biggest stories without all the screaming. Locked On Sports today brings you can't miss analysis, opinions, and news, streaming 24/7 on YouTube or the free Amazon Fire TV channels app, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
You are Locked On Mets, your daily New York Mets podcast.
What a game. What a game. To kind of go back and start from the beginning a little bit, we got to give Tyler McGill some flowers for that performance, because Tyler McGill kept the Mets in this game. You knew you were going to be taxed with pitching. How are you going to get through it? You had to manage it in a really, interesting way, because for one, Schwellenbach is dealing from the jump. So it doesn't look like the Mets are going to be able to score off of him. So you have to have in the back of your mind, all right, if we go to Jose Budo in the 4th inning, we're not going to have him for a game 2. So you had to keep that, in your head the whole time. And so I think the Mets probably pushed McGill a little bit further than they would have liked to. You saw against the Phillies Sunday Night Baseball, McGill versus Zach Wheeler. He was pulled after 4 innings because you didn't want him to face that lineup a 3rd time through. But credit to Tyler McGill. Yes, he made a couple mistakes. Ozzie Albies got him for a 2-run homer. Ramon Laureano got one as well, a solo shot. But McGill was 1 out away from a quality start. So he really did his job. Huascar Braziban comes on in a still tight game. Again, because you're trying to save some of your bigger guys. And Braziban, a little bit of an adventure, but he got the out that he needed. Adam Ottavino, a scoreless 7th. And then all hell breaks loose in the 8th inning. I just want to go back to that rally that the Mets had, because it was such a testament to what this team has been all year. Tyrone Taylor had a fantastic game. He nearly put a run on the board for the Mets earlier in the game when he hits one, a dribbler down the first base line that has some crazy spin on it. He tore the cover off the ball. He was booking it all the way. Another runner, as the broadcast pointed out, would have been thrown out on that play. The ball comes back fair. Taylor was in front of Schwellenbach to get to first base, so a tough throw for him. He gets the first, steals second, advances to third, where he's going on contact on a softly hit ball to the shortstop. He almost manufactured a run, but the Mets don't score in that spot because of Harrison Bader. And if you listen to my show this morning, the pregame leading in, I talked about the decision when it came to that third outfield spot. I knew Nimmo was going to be in. I knew Taylor was going to be in. I wasn't sure if the Mets were going to go with Jesse Winker, left on right with Schwellenbach pitching, Starling Marte, the best player of the group, or if they were to go Harrison Bader and stick with defense, trying to maybe steal a couple outs with Tyler McGill on the mound. I wanted them to go with Marte. They went Bader, and there was 2 spots where Harrison Bader came up with an opportunity for the Mets to score, and he just didn't do it. But they got Starling Marte in the game in time. And before Marte, you also have to shout out Francisco Alvarez as Tyrone Taylor knocks out Schwellenbach. Joe Jimenez comes on, and Francisco Alvarez rips the double that scores Taylor, gets the Mets on the board. Marte comes up, gets the pinch hit, drives in Alvarez. Then Lindor comes up, runners at the corners, gets the first of those crucial hits he'd have late, drives in a run. Again, he goes first to third on a base hit by Jose Iglesias, who fell behind the count 0-2 as they brought in Raisel Iglesias, the Braves closer, to try to get the 6-out save. And Iglesias, Jose, fell behind the count, ends up doing what he's done all year, coming through clutch, especially in a 2-strike count, gets a hit, drives in Marte. Lindor goes to third, Vientos with the sac fly, And then again, Brandon Nimmo, that 2-run homer is massive. It's massive. And if you think back to this season and how any one game matters, remember Brandon Nimmo went into Atlanta and had that monster game. What was it? 2 home runs, like 5 RBIs. I don't remember off the top of my head. It was pretty incredible stuff what Nimmo did earlier in the season. Then here he comes through in a big spot. That's what makes this so gratifying, is seeing all these guys come through in their own way. Lindor and Nimmo being at the forefront of these 2 Mets wins. And you know what? Even Edwin Diaz, because yes, Diaz was a disaster in that 8th inning. He was. But Carlos Mendoza had a decision to make when Francisco Lindor hits the 2-run homer in the top of the 9th inning to give his team a lead. Do you go to Ryan Stanek, who, to his credit, has been okay lately and has pitched in a ton of big games with the Astros, so I don't think he would have been fazed by that moment, and they're going to need him in the playoffs. But you have an opportunity there. Who are you going to go to? 3 outs. You're going to clinch it. And I honestly liked, even though I was nervous, that they stuck with Edwin, because you know what? You're either going to win or lose with your guy on the mound. And Edwin Diaz delivered. He delivered for the New York Mets. He was able to get those last 3 outs. And of course, the last out, this is just what shows you that baseball is poetic. Baseball, you have to be romantic about baseball. It is the only sport like this where narratives just find people. They find people where, for one, when the Braves come back, it's Travis d'Arnaud getting hit off the end of his bat, and it's Jared Kelenic who gets the hit where Edwin Diaz is in cover first. Because, of course, if you had to pick 2 Braves in that entire clubhouse, that whole roster, 2 Braves that you don't want to see beat the Mets, it was d'Arnaud and Kelenic because of their former Mets ties. So then to see d'Arnaud come back up and he makes the final out of the game, and not only does he make the final out of the game, it's a ground ball to Francisco Lindor. The ball finds him, and of course Lindor makes that last play to get the 27th out. To see the emotions go running through all these guys, knowing that they finally did it. They went from completely out of it, dead in the water at the end of May. And they're the best team in baseball over the final 4 months, and they don't collapse. Not only do they not collapse, they get in dramatic fashion. They come back. They show that grit. You feel so good about this Mets team. You really do. It's just such an unbelievable season we've all gotten the chance to enjoy. And I cannot wait to see the playoffs. I also think that it's a testament to this team to win it in game 1. Again, I know I said that before with my dad on, but it's worth repeating. If the Mets had won game 2 with, who knows, Bryce Elder or Dylan Dodd or whatever AAA pitcher the Braves would have called up to start game 2 of this doubleheader, if the Mets would have won that game, everyone would have said, oh, they backed in. You know, they just avoided the collapse because the Braves didn't need it. Well, now you can say that about the Braves if they win. And the Braves can go to San Diego. The Mets can go to Milwaukee. We'll find out, and I will talk about it on tomorrow's show, where we're at going into a wild card run. I will set the stage for all of that. But the Mets were able to take this into their own hands and get the job done and clinch in an incredible game that we will never forget.
Game Time makes getting to the ballpark even faster and easier. Prices on the Game Time app actually go down the closer it gets to first pitch. With killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, and their best price guarantee, Game Time takes the guesswork out of buying tickets. They're obsessed with finding ways to help you save money on tickets. Game Time has deals on tickets right up to the start of the event and even an hour after it starts. It's the place to find last-minute seats. Find exclusive flash deals and sponsored deals on tickets for football, basketball, baseball, concerts, comedy, theater, and more. And the Game Time guarantee means you'll always get the best price. If you find tickets in the same section and row for less, Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the free app, and new users can get $20 off their first purchase with code Locked On. Terms apply. That's code Locked On for $20 off your first purchase with Game Time. Download the Game Time app today. Last minute tickets, the lowest price guaranteed. Are you watching Fox Sports or ESPN on your TV all day? Have to turn down the volume with all that shouting? Make the switch to Locked On Sports today, a free 24/7 sports streaming channel programmed for you every day to bring you the biggest stories without all the screaming. Locked On Sports Today brings you can't miss analysis, opinions, and news streaming 24/7 on YouTube or the free Amazon Fire TV channels app, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Baseball's all-time hit leader has passed away.
You are Locked On Reds, your daily Cincinnati Reds podcast.
The all-time hit king has passed, and we asked you guys, what are some of your favorite memories, and we want to dive into a few of those now.
All right. There's lots going on in the chat. So many people have memories of Pete Rose. Some of them are getting away from me here, but one of the things I saw was, the bench clearing brawl in the playoffs. I'm trying to find it right now, Jeff. Sorry. It's got away from me. There's too much there's too much going by in the chat. I didn't grab it in time. Sorry. Whoever posted that, put it in again about the fight in the 70s playoffs with Pete Rose at second base. I can't remember the name of the guy that he slid into, but I see a lot of people talking about the way that Pete slid. And of course, we all recall the iconic picture of the head first dive. And I believe that's why, that's why the statue is what it is, right? Nobody else slid with such intensity.
Yeah, and I think it was cool too. There was a memory of his that he was talking to the Inquirer about back in 2018, whenever he got the chance to go into the Team Hall of Fame, and you remembered him and all that stuff. And he was talking about, my favorite thing that I remember from my career is just all of the winning games that I got to be a part of, and the fact that we won World Series, we won playoff games, we won all these different things, and that is just such a thing. Like I think it's really part of any good player's mentality, is just going out there and winning a ball game. Like, the competitive nature of an athlete all culminates with how many wins and losses that you have. At the end of the day, that's the thing that matters the most. As many hits as you get, and as well as your batting average did, and all this other stuff, how many wins did you have? And that is what he was focused on the most in his career.
Yeah, Jeff Frazier here. Bud Harrelson against the Mets. That's the postseason fight that got away from me earlier. Big time Pete Rose there. Again, never back down from a fight, never back down from being hard nosed. He didn't have a fight with Fosse because Fosse couldn't breathe. But the fight in the postseason was a different beast at second base. Someone posted that they saw him. Was he at a card show yesterday? Is this right? Chris says, I saw him yesterday at the Nashville card show. He didn't look good. I'm glad he got to see all his boys one last time. That's great. If he was gathered together with some of the guys, I missed that there was a signing of some kind yesterday, Jeff. But, he was out and about several times a year. He would be in Cincinnati doing signings and doing things. Sports Gallery, Cincy Sports Gallery had him several times. He was a mainstay over in Las Vegas for a lot of years. Where you could get a signing. I have a ball back there that he signed from his time in Vegas. I wonder now, there's been a lot of talk in the chat here, Jeff. Does the Hall of Fame let him in now that he has passed away? And I know, we're not going to get into a lot of the off-field stuff. We're not going to talk about the betting per se, but I am curious about this question. And I think it is something we can talk about today. How does the Hall of Fame react to this? How does Major League Baseball react to this? Because just because he's passed away, it doesn't make him eligible. Shoeless Joe Jackson still not eligible for the Hall of Fame. Major League Baseball would have to make a change. And there is some sentiment here in the chat that if they were to move to do something like this, Rose's family should decline. That's some of the sentiment in the chat, that if you weren't going to let him in while he was alive, we're not going to help you put him in now that he's gone. What do you think of that?
I mean, I couldn't fault them for that decision, because it almost felt as though he was never going to get in. And I think it's become more and more clear to most of us these last couple of years that they're just waiting for that to happen, so that different things have come about where there were whispers of a chance that he might be given, especially whenever the commissioner's office changed hands from Bud Selig to Rob Manfred, and it seemed as though he was being given an opportunity, and then other stuff was said and other stuff came out, and it's just like, it kind of felt like it was all very fake. And I do wonder a little bit, and I wouldn't fault them at all. I mean, he's a Hall of Famer in the city of Cincinnati. There's nobody in the city of Cincinnati that would disagree. I mean, they might get a little, sarcastic with you and say, well, technically he's not, but it's pretty obvious that his career is the career of one of the front of the Hall of Famers. But at the same time, there's definitely a human element to it now that it kind of feels like it could be. Like I saw one, I was trying to see if I could find it, but somebody had mentioned that like kind of feels like it'd be an insult at this point to put him in the Hall of Fame.
So I could see how his family would feel that way. Greg checks in and says his memory of Pete is celebrating 4192 on the field with Pete Jr. And I think everyone that's a Reds fan at one time or another has seen that video. Everybody that's a Reds fan, I'm sure, has heard Marty calling that hit with Joe Nuxall losing his ever-loving mind in the background, telling that ball to get down. Exactly. Get down. And, Pete, there's several interviews of Pete talking about that moment and just how, initially he was able to hold it together, but that the ovation just kept going and going and going. And the longer the ovation went, that the harder it was for him to fight back the emotion until he eventually breaks down. And that's when Petey Jr. comes out and, creates this iconic moment that Greg's talking about. And it's probably, I remember when that happened. I remember the news coverage of it. That's one that's in my memory banks and the feeling around the city at the time. And probably, I hold that pretty special as well, Greg. That's a good one.
Yeah, it's funny because as we're doing the show, my dad actually texted me. He said, they'll put him in the Hall of Fame now and I'll be mad. And I think that's probably a prevailing sentiment amongst Reds country, is that it's like at this point, it almost feels like a backhanded compliment to put him in the Hall of Fame at this point. But there's so many great memories that, I love, and I just lost it because I was looking at it a moment ago. Our friend Carrie had put a great one on there, just talking about how, he would crouch in the box and he would crowd the plate and he would try to play mind games with the pitcher. He tried to play mind games with the umpire so that he could get the leg up. He turned it into a little bit of a strategy where he was able to kind of counter what the pitcher was able to do, in that he could shrink the strike zone and really shrink his zone as far as like where he was going to get his pitch from. It's funny because you don't see that a lot nowadays. There's a lot of very similar looking batting stances. Not a lot of guys are really crouching, trying to minimize the strike zone as much. And I find that intriguing too. Like even talking about the future of what could be, like, could there be an ABS system? Like, is the ABS system going to account for somebody who might crouch and shrink the strike zone like that? That's kind of funny.
The unique batting stats, I saw that in the chat earlier, talking about Pete's batting stance is just one that, is iconic, that stands out. And gone are some of the more inventive ones nowadays. Everybody kind of has a very similar stance. And I miss some of the quirky ones, the Pete Rose crouch, the Julio Franco bat all the way up over. That was one that was always fun to mimic. But, for Pete, looking at some of the memories, I guess Pete Rose did WrestleMania. Pete Rose did a lot of things in the years after baseball, and I'll have to go check out YouTube for a clip of Pete Rose at WrestleMania. I saw
somebody said that he got a tombstone from Kane. Kane gave him so the Big Red Machine Kane gave Pete Rose a tombstone at WrestleMania. That's pretty cool.
All right, I'm trying to read and get through these, Jeff. I think this, Josh has a. I think how a lot of Reds fans nowadays, Josh was born in 1979, so he just missed out on Pete's heyday, but did get to see quite a bit of him because his uncle had recorded a lot of games on VHS. Wow, Josh, showing your age, recorded games on VHS. No, I'm there with you. It was a dark time in Cincinnati when Pete had to leave, and I'm glad that somewhere along the way baseball relented and Pete did get to be appreciated by this city. I was at the 2015 All-Star game when they did the franchise 4 and let Pete on the field. That was a big moment for Pete. I remember him being part of the All-Century team, and when just to show you how much Pete was loved during that All-Century celebration, he was interviewed after it by Jim Gray. And I don't know if you recall this or not, Jeff, but Jim Gray really tore into Pete about his suspension, his ban from baseball, the gambling, all of the things. And in a moment that was supposed to be celebratory, Jim Gray really went at Pete, tried to tear him down a little bit. And the next night, I can't remember the member of the Yankees that did this, but stood by for the post-game interview. They throw it to Jim Gray. Jim Gray asks his first question, and the Yankees player leans into the mic and goes, "I just want you to know, Jim, we're not going to talk to you because of the way you treated Pete," and walks away. And that's how revered Pete Rose was. The Pete Rose, the player, was within this sport. And, you don't see that, baseball players appreciate each other, but that kind of reverence, that kind of respect, it's few and far between, I think.
Yeah. And I think it's important to remember his career and remember what he was as a player and what he meant to this city. And that's really why we wanted to get on and just talk for a little bit. And I'm glad that, we had a lot of folks in the comments section wanting to talk about Pete as well. And thank you all for joining us on this episode. It was a shock, and kind of like the person said that he, saw Pete at a show signing autographs last night. I know that that's a thing that he has done quite a lot and in a lot of different places, Vegas, Cincinnati, all over the place. He was always about the fans, and as much as there are plenty of people that vilify what he did, like there's still so many more people that remember him as their favorite player and will always remember him as their favorite player. And tonight is a sad night because of that. But just wanted to thank everybody real quick for joining us on the show, for being active in the comments section. Really appreciate you making us part of your night. And, just want to say rest in peace to the Hit King.
Yeah, it's going to be a week, I would imagine, of commentary and celebrations and remembering all of the things he did. We're going to hear tonight and then tomorrow from the remaining members of the Big Red Machine. We'll hear from Johnny Bench. We'll hear from George Foster. We'll hear from Geronimo. We'll hear from Davey. There's going to be a lot of remembrances of Pete. And I think that we'll be talking about him off and on, for years to come still. The Hall of Fame question remains unanswered. And that seems to be, looking at the comments here in the comment section, so many people are hitting on the Hall of Fame piece of this, Jeff, that he should have been in the Hall of Fame. And I don't know how you as a Hall of Fame consider yourself a legitimate representation of the sport when the guy that has the most hits in the sport is not inducted in. And I don't know what the answer is as far as how his family should respond or how baseball should address this, but they should address it somehow. I think the one thing they can't do is ignore it. And I hope that there is something, because clearly that is the piece that everybody's hitting on right now, Jeff, everybody talking about the Hall of Fame.